No book or DVD can truly convey the essence of the martial arts. You can read any of the books I've authored and co-authored, or greater works like the Book of Five Rings by Miyamoto Musashi, or Sun Tzu. All of these are only indicators of the actual art. They're fence posts on the road of martial arts that show the distance traveled. Countless hours, unknown miles, and unaccountable money have been spent in the quest for martial knowledge, earning this knowledge. Anybody that has been in the arts for some time can attest to this kind of effort. Their desire to grow, change, and study are not fleeting fancies that stop upon earning a black belt. It's a lifelong pursuit that's earned and not given away. And in the pursuit of this art, we integrate these lessons into who we are as a person. These lessons and techniques are trained, learned, and incorporated into our muscle memory and our minds. To simply read a book, view a DVD, or look at something on the World Wide Web doesn't truly illustrate what's going on in the art. Much like an iceberg has a larger part of its mass below the water surface, the martial arts are also. When I initially began training in the martial arts, videotape, DVD, the World Wide Web simply didn't exist. In fact, when I graduated from high school, no such thing as a computer even existed in the building. We were wholly dependent on our instructors, and maybe an odd book that could be purchased by mail order and then passed around the martial arts club. In some instances, we went as far as ordering books we could not read, simply to glean what we could from the pictures, and few magazines existed. Today things appear different because of the amount of information available, but it's not the depth of knowledge that's being conveyed, but the outer knowledge. So in actuality, it is the same as it has always been. In many ways, the same knowledge that I was able to get from the few scraps of information and books I could acquire is available today. This information is in a great volume, with reverse angles, overhead shots, however, it is rarely deep. This is not a condemnation, only an observation. How many versions of a form or kata do you need to know? How many versions of Sanchin do you need to be able to do? The Goju-ryu version? Which one of those should you truly know, as there are several versions? What about the Ishin-ryu version of it, or the Shito-ryu version? And why do they spell it differently? The list goes on and on. These changes are sometimes personal, sometimes historical, or both. Chasing all of these questions, versions, or permutations sets the student on the path of institutional perfection, a test that can never successfully be passed. Frankly, seeking institutional perfection is about as effective as chasing a dozen rabbits through a field in an attempt to catch them all. The result is you catch none. This is because each institution claims to own the truth. And if you should catch one rabbit, the other screams in jealousy that they're the carriers of truth, and you've only captured a lesser rabbit. There's a joke that helps illustrate this point, and it goes, do you know how many karate instructors it takes to change a light bulb? No? It takes 100. 1 to do it and 99 to say, that's not the way I was taught. The teacher-student relationship is important in the martial arts. It always has been, and it will be, as far as the future can see. This relationship is important this specific way. Historically in the martial arts, things were not shown to every student. Techniques, understandings, the emote, the outer, the hiden, the inner. There were ways of protecting oneself during a different time in world history. During a majority of human history, and for much of the world today actually, 911 emergencies, sidewalks, cell phones, video recorders, and many other items didn't exist, and they don't. Simply put, you were often on your own when it came to crime against you or your property. Further, your money was kept in your home and on your person. That meant that what you knew and what you studied within the martial arts was a vital concern. And for the ethical instructor, it was their responsibility to not arm the unscrupulous with fighting knowledge. The teacher did not decide to teach a person because they were dedicated. They were chosen to receive the fighting information by their character and relationship to the teacher. Family or tribe was more important than most any other form of relationship. When times got tough, crops failed, or fishing was poor, you depended on your family. When you became ill, you depended on the family. The success in competition against other families was the one and primary role of the family unit. The competition against countries, that's the function of the military. As a result, knowledge and know-how to defend oneself quickly and with the least amount of effort was important. keeping it secret stacked the odds in your favor. This resulted in an environment where not everything concerning the martial arts was taught or demonstrated to their full capacity. Some stories talk of techniques and ideas being taught incorrectly so as to hide them. The idea of deliberately teaching misinformation I can't speak to, but teachings deliberately omitted, yes, it has been done and it is done. The kata themselves are genius. And with not everything taught, technique and understanding passes away with each generation. Unless and until a genius with vision and insight comes along that is able to once again breathe life into the kata. Let me be explicit. I do not consider myself one of these people, and any allusion made in the direction is a mistake of the way I've written this DVD and is not my nature. The things that I share in this DVD were explicitly taught to me and I've learned from my own study. The reason for holding these forms in such high regard is to ensure that any information that is hidden or not clearly explained is held clearly to allow for later observation. This type of attitude makes perfect sense. An example of this behavior are the rocks retrieved from the moon by the Apollo missions in the late 60s and early 70s. While some rocks were studied and tested, others were put away for safekeeping so that the science advances that were made at a later date could be applied to these moon rocks for better scientific study. Yet holding these kata in high regard has not made them immune to change. They're not held in stasis like the moon rocks. A person need only go back one generation along their martial heritage and see changes. These changes have been in regard to timing, direction, distance, application. Even simple things as to where a thumb is placed or where the pressure on a foot might be. These things are sometimes trivial and sometimes significant, and it is up to the practitioner to discern. The only guidance I can offer in respect to this puzzle is this: form must follow function, and function must be clear. If the function is an affectation, the form requires stringent review. The idea behind this DVD appears to be at odds with everything that I've just said. However, it's not. When you take the time, the effort, and the diligence of doggedly pursuing the deeper meanings of your kata, you will learn much for yourself. This DVD is designed to help you in that pursuit. It is not a substitute for hands-on training, but it will help you find the power, the focus, and the concentrated effort that Sanchin training can bring to your art. Sanchin! Regarding the history of Sanchin Kata, There's many, many histories. There's the Weiichi-ryu history, there's the Ishin-ryu history, there's the Goju-ryu history, there's the Shito-ryu. There are many, many histories. And even the histories within, the small towns within the history of Sanchin, whether it's Tamora or Shuri or Naha. But the way to focus on it is that even though the patterns might be different, the essential underlying principles are all the same. So when we talk about the history and we say, oh, Sanchin is all Chinese, it's not all Chinese. Oh, Sanchin is all Okinawan. It's not all Okinawan. There was an interplay between these two cultures. And so what you find is you can say 5 ancestor Kung Fu has Sanchin. So clearly it came from China. We don't know that for sure. Many of these things are lost to history. We can say, well, my instructor told me 500 years ago that his father learned it from so-and-so and it's solely Okinawan. Maybe it is. Maybe it isn't. That's not the point. The point is based in the application, the understanding, and how to make your art better through this core kata. We're going to deal with the feet right now. One of the most critical parts of Sanchin, kata. So Ken, if you would please. Yeah, stand right here. So what Ken's going to do is he's going to copy my feet. We're going to take the left foot and turn it in slightly, and we're going to take the right foot and we're going to put it 1 foot length and about a half of a foot length forward, and we're going to turn it this way. This is Sanchin Dachi. This is the stance that's used throughout the entire form and used in many, many forms remaining in the entire syllabus of Goju-ryu Karate. But before we get too far down this road, we're going to talk about how the foot integrates with the ground and how it has to be unified with the ground to provide the foundation so that we can have good energy radiation through the body. So Ken, if you would, I'd just like you to take your left foot and put it forward for me like that. When we're looking at the foot, it's a very, very interesting structure. And so what we're going to do is we're going to break this down forward to front and side to side. One of the things that you'll see sometimes, and I'm going to kind of speak in a little bit of a negative here, but that's okay, is that you'll see a rotation in towards the foot. So he'll rotate his foot here, collapsing the arch of his foot. This isn't a good thing to do, because what it does is it destroys the structure of the foot and doesn't allow for coordinated movement. The same thing goes as when he rolls his foot out to this side. He actually pulls the large toe and adds too much of an arch to the foot. What he's looking for is a very natural stance. The foot just simply sits on top of the ground, but it sinks down into the ground slightly. Sometimes this is called mud foot, but one way to look at it is to simply have the opinion that the foot is, sinking down into the mud of a pond, maybe a quarter to a half an inch. Now, when we start moving this way through the foot, what happens is that you'll see people that will stay too far back on the heel. This makes for a very strong leg, but one that doesn't move very well. The other way to do it is to lean way forward and to lift the heel up off the ground, or even to have it in very, very light contact. This places all of the contact on the front of the foot and makes the calf taut. And that's not what we want to do. What we want to do is we want to break this down and make it very flat, but very natural at the same time. Ken, would you do me a favor and would you move your foot onto this green line for me? Right. And what you'll see is this is a very natural stance. What will happen is that people will go ahead and turn your foot a little bit out more like this. Turn it out a little bit more. This is a very natural stance. This is the way that people will stand, waiting for a train or watching a game or something. And what it is the foot's splayed out. And it's a very natural stance. But what we want to do is we want to create something that's a little bit unnatural. When oftentimes students are asked to point their foot straight ahead, what they'll do is they'll put their big toe right on the green line. This is the sensation of being straight ahead, but it really isn't true. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right? So the middle toe is actually the middle of the foot. This is the driver. This is the most important toe. It's difficult to walk without it, but we got 2 on this side, 2 on this side. So what Ken wants to do is he wants to bring this middle toe over to the green line, keeping his heel here. That creates a sensation in the body that what's happening is that you're pigeon-toed. You're putting your toes inward, but in fact what you're doing is you're splitting the center of the foot. All right, what we're going to do now is we're going to turn sideways. So Ken, if you turn sideways, we're going to take a look at the foot from this angle. Ken, would you take just a step back for me, please? Thanks. What we're looking at here is now he has achieved that same sensation that we used with the green line when you were watching this way, from the heel to the middle toe. What we want to take into account here is that the foot really determines how the leg is going to move. And let me show you what I'm talking about, is that when he's bent forward just a little bit like this, the Achilles tendon, the calf, these start to become active. But when he moves back, then it's the thigh. When he's moved forward slightly like this gives him an ability to move from the calf and from his foot and not from his thigh. What that means is this. He's going to move more like a racehorse or more like an ostrich. Kind of a strange thing to say, but here's the deal. Generally in nature, the higher the heel is on the animal, the faster it can move. The lower the heel, the more it carries a load and the slower it is. So what Ken wants to be able to do is he wants to be able to activate this heel and not move from the heel. So Ken, if you turn this way and face here, what we're talking about is this, is that if his foot is splayed out, I'm going to turn your foot this way, here, put that foot forward if you would, just a hair, and if he were going to move to, say, a kick with this leg, because this foot is splayed out, his initial movement needs to come from his hip. This makes it slow. And it uses the entire leg as a dead weight. When he turns this foot inward, he's now able to move off of the ball of his foot by lifting his heel. There you go. So let's move this back now, and let's just have you do like a front snap kick. Okay, so what you're going to do is just go ahead and throw that front snap kick from here. You can see that the hip had to move first. Let's do that again. Step it back just a little bit further if you would, and now do it again. You see that the body has to move, the hip has to move. What we're going to do now is we're going to shorten that stance up into here, and we're going to do what we call that traditional Sanchin stance. He's going to turn his toes in so that that center line, remember that green line we had here? He's coming off of here. Now he can lift his heel and move from here. So please. So he can use this to drive a snapping, strong kick from the ground first instead of having to move it from the center of his body. All right, what we're going to do now is we're going to have Ken step onto these lines on the ground, and we're going to discuss bad Sanchin dachi and good Sanchin dachi. So Ken, if you'd go ahead and put your foot on the red line there and on that red line. Now what you're looking at here is sometimes termed classical, but it's really a little too much. We jokingly say, at least in my dojo, we talk about the Goldilocks rule. You know, too much, too little, just right. Goju-ryu karate is about just right. It's not too much, it's not too deep. It's not, in regard to a stance, it's not too deep, it's not too high, it's just right. You know, we don't block too high, we don't block too low, we block just right. So you want to avoid exaggeration. This, and let's go ahead and take that toe right there, that middle toe, and move it clear over to here. Yeah. Now, this kind of creates almost a knock-kneed stance. And what happens here is that this guy can't move from it, and he's also fairly weak. This knee back here, this knee back here, and what happens is, you see, he starts kind of bouncing and wiggling, because this isn't exactly what you want to be doing. So what we have here is a little bit of an exaggeration, an affectation of the stance. What we're going to do is we're going to have Ken move this middle toe over to the green line. So now, again, he has that sensation we talked about, which is being pigeon-toed. If I told him just off the street to put his foot straight, he'd go to his big toe and put it on that green line, like this. And that would give him the sensation of his foot being straight ahead, but we know now that that's not the case. So we move it back to this toe. That's the green line. Green line, good. The difference is over here now is that you'll see that he's too shallow this way. There's virtually only the space of like one bow or staff between his feet. He needs to move his big toe out to here. And then, there you go. Now, we're talking about the right kind of feet. He's going to bend his knee a little bit, and we'll talk about that more in just a moment. This is more reflective of a good Sanchin dachi, a Sanchin stance, than the other one, which is just too contrived, too difficult to maintain, and too difficult to fight with. Let's talk about the ankles. When we talk about the ankles in Goju-ryu karate, they're actually fairly soft. They're not hard. The bones, the tibia and fibia, come down into the top of the ankle and stay in position. But they do that without tension. But he drives down into his heel. So what he's going to do here is he's not going to have his weight pushed up onto the ball of his foot this way, because that, although it gives him a sense of driving forward, isn't really what he needs to do. He needs to put this heel in the ground. Because Sanchin Kata is designed for close fighting, what you'll find is that instead of having this foot being rolled up onto the ball of the foot, the heel is in the ground. This allows for unification of the body and a generation of power from the ground as we start to put the structure together. Over on this side, the ankle again is the same. This ankle has to be loose because what he's going to do with his knee is going to change his foot. When he turns his knee outward, what he's going to find is that he starts to get a shearing factor on the ground instead of a gripping factor. Now what we're going to do, we're going to demonstrate how the knees work in Sanchin Kata. Oftentimes you'll hear the people say, you know, you need to grip the ground. So he'll grip the ground with his toes like this, and his foot will look, you know, something like this. You know, I'm gonna grip the ground with my toes, but really what happens is that disconnects you from the ground, and it makes you easily uprooted. The foot, again, we talked about that mud foot, and that's what he wants to attain here. So he gets his gripping through a shearing this way, and it's done here. What he's going to do is he's going to rotate his knee outward this way. Let's move that back. Watch his toes as he moves. See how his foot starts to become tense right here? That's what's happening with that lead foot. Now if you'd hold that right there, Ken. This leg, what we need to do is we need to make sure that the bones are stacked. Would you turn sideways just like we did earlier? Right. And now adopt the Sanchin stance. You'll often see the knee bent this way in Sanchin Kata. But in fact, it needs to be, he's going to push it all the way back till he locks it, till it's almost, you know, to the point to where you'd say, that's like hyperextension. And then he's going to just release it back just about that far. What happens now is we get the femur stacked on top of the tibia and fibia, and you can start to see that from the hip, we have a straight line going directly into the base, into the ground. This is what we really want to achieve with this back leg, because this is going to become very important in power generation, as is this foot and this knee in a moment. All right, let's talk about the hips on this level of motion. So we're going to be talking about this level of motion. Oftentimes, one of the things that can happen is that as this foot is held back, this hip comes back. This hip is not so much of a problem because it's right here, it's over the thigh, it's a fairly straightforward affair. However, what you want to do is instead of having the hips like this, he wants to twist this hip forward a little bit so that he's square to his opponent, whatever the aggressor might be. And so now, with the straighter leg and the structure here this way with the hip, now we're beginning to build what we need for the performance of the Kata Sanchin. Now that we've talked about the feet, knees, and thighs, we're going to continue to talk about the waist. And we talked about this motion earlier with Ken, where what we did is we talked about the hip being back and the hip being forward. Hip being back, not so good. Hip forward, correct. The reason for that is that it starts to lock the body into place. And so we're concerned about that motion and being square and being able to directly approach our opponent instead of leaving part of our body behind. So when we stand this way, we now have this horizontal motion in place. What we're going to do now is we're going to move the vertical motion with this. And what we're going to do is we're going to reach up and we're going to grab the coccyx and we're just going to pull that down a little bit. We want to avoid doing this because this is not correct. Because what it does is it separates the torso from the lower part of the body, the thighs, the calves, the feet. And so by too much tension, you create this barrier. We don't want that. What we want is we want that dropping of the coccyx, tilting of the sacrum, from the sacrum tilting basically from being this position to this position. And in doing that, we roll the hip just slightly forward. It's as if I had a pie tin that had water in it and it was pouring out the front, and all I did was lift up to stop that water from dripping out of the front of the pan. I level my hips by, again, pulling on the coccyx and tilting the sacrum into a more vertical position. So what we're going to do now is we're going to demonstrate this with Ken. He's going to turn sideways, and as we look at this, go ahead and take the Sanchin pose, okay? And what you'll see is that from this position, normally this is the way people stand. They stand with their lower back collapsed a little bit and the abdomen distended just a little bit, but it's tipped this way. So what Ken wants to do is he wants to make this motion come to here. And by doing that, what he's going to do is he's going to flatten his sacrum, again, by just as if somebody had reached up and pulled on that little bone, that little coccyx. And so from here, he's going to now pull down just a little bit so he gets that rotation. Let's go ahead and pull this back a little bit like that. Yeah. Now, relax again like you're waiting for the bus. And what will happen is this back will kink in. Go ahead and, there it is. This is a normal way to stand, because what happens is that when we're standing this way, we're allowing the bones to stack themselves and the muscles to be as passive as possible in that, because it takes energy for the muscles to hold the bones in place. So we want to stand in a way that allows the bones to stack themselves as much as possible. That's just a natural economy of behavior. So what we'll do now is that we're going to change that, and he's going to flatten that out. There we go, and that's what we're talking about. Now, Ken, if you turn around and face front, when he does this, he's done the back side, and that's worked well. But he also has to do the front side. Would you put your hands? Yeah. He also needs to do the front side here. And what you'll see again is that position when people go this way. It's too much. The reason it's too much is that it, again, cuts the body off. But the way that we want to take care of that and to really get this taught is we want to pretend that we're actually trying to stop going to the bathroom. And jokingly, they call it the pee cutter. And that's what you really need to do, is you get into that position and then you stop. Now, if you do that, you get the sensation of tightening your lower abdomen, where the abdominis rectus comes down here into the top. And now what you're starting to do is you're starting to unify the body from the front to the back. There's two sets of muscles running down the front here. If I turn Ken around here, and all the way 180, yeah. Down here, there's 4 bundles of muscles that run on this side, and there's 4 bundles of muscles that run on this side for a total of 8. Turn back around. So what we have is a total of 8 and 4. So by tightening the abdomen, what I'm actually doing is I'm using something that is intrinsically of less power than I am back here. When you go to work, the OSHA signs don't say, don't lift with your abdomen. They say, don't lift with your back, because that's your nature. You want to lift with your back because it is strong. Okay, what we're going to talk about now is we're going to talk about the spine. One way to look at the way that Sanchin Kata is approached is that you have the spine, but instead of being down the center of the body, like is often taught in some arts, what we're really focusing on is the spine. And what we do is we fight bone to bone. We don't fight muscle to muscle. I want to fight bone to bone. And so in doing that, I put myself back into my spine and not the center of my body, or the center of my mass of my body. So in doing that now, what we're going to do is we're going to start bringing the torso together, because you've got the torso and the abdomen, and they're divided by the diaphragm, which allows you to breathe, and that connects back here at the last of the lumbar region. That's what separates L from T, or thoracic vertebrae. So what I want to do now is I want to have Ken, and you can see, let's turn this. You can see that there's a space right here where I can place my finger in between his lower back and this stick. What he's going to do is he's going to push these lumbar back out so that there is no space now. So if you'd start to, there you go, a little more, perfect. Now what he's starting to do is he's starting to straighten the spine. And he's already taken this hump out of the top of the spine, which many people walk around with. Thanks. If you'll notice, just stand normally, drop your arms to the side. You'll notice that there's a slight curve right here. And you know how the body, the spine curves this way. You can see the natural curvature. What this does is this serves as a giant shock absorber. It absorbs the bounces and bumps of the day. So what we want to do is we want to take the natural curve out of the spine so that the bones can radiate all the way down to the feet. So this part of the back needs to be held flat, and this part needs to be held flat. However, these are counterintuitive curves. They're opposite of the way that you naturally stand. And if it's one thing about karate, karate uses muscles and bones in ways that you don't use them in day-to-day life. So what he's going to do again is he's going to come back and he's going to straighten his lower spine out to take this, no space there. And then what he's going to do is he's going to keep this here. Now he's going to move his head back. Now what we're starting to do is we're starting to get a straight spine. Now when he does this, he drops the sacrum just a little bit. See that drop? That's what we're talking about, is getting down lower and stronger and straighter. Then what he's going to do is he's going to just lift this belt just a little bit on the front side. Let's turn this way. So from this position, he'll have his back straight again, and what he's going to do is he's going to drop his sacrum, and there comes that belt up just a little bit. And this is the back side and the root front of this entire piece of his body. What he's trying to do is unify the entire body to become one piece of wood. Thanks. Okay, what we've talked about now is we've talked about the spine, we've talked about the lower abdomen, we've talked about the lower lumbar area. What we're going to do now is we're going to start to work on the front of the Sanchin, and we're going to close the body down and try to unify the abdomen and the torso. And that happens at the solar plexus. We've all been told that if you hit in the solar plexus, that you can't build muscle, you can't defend it. But what you can do is you can put your body in such a structure that it will actually close it down. So what Ken's going to do is he's going to take this bow and he's going to put it right here into my solar plexus. And so when I stand in Sanchin, now he's going to push into me here, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to close down right here. So this shuts down. Now push. See, it doesn't hurt because it's closed. And I'm not using muscle to close this, I'm using technique. So now, if Ken were to strike me right here, he just hits. Okay, that's not closed. But when I close, it doesn't move my body in this part at all. So it's very safe. Not so much against a knife, but against a fist, it works fairly well. So just one more time. If I stand this way and I'm open and Ken hits me, this is what happens. But when I close down into Sanchin stance and then he hits, it doesn't happen. It's closed. It works well. Thanks. All right, so now what we're doing is we're standing in Sanchin Dachi. He's got his knee bent slightly. He's got his foot turned as we've illustrated earlier. He's got his leg back straight here, not locked but stacked. He's got his abdomen pulled up slightly here. He's got his lumbar region. He's pushed back with that. His back is straight. His head's up, chin's down just a little bit. And then he has closed down his solar plexus. Now what we're going to do is we're going to move to the shoulders. One of the things that we'll be taking a look at is the breathing. So right now, if Ken takes a breath up into his chest, you'll see his chest move, you'll see his shoulders move. That's not a good thing. What we want to do is we want to keep this unified, and we want to breathe down here from the belly. This is not new material, but it's very common to breathe from the chest and to be up here. When we do this, what happens is that we lift ourselves up and we unroot ourselves a little bit. The other thing is that it separates this line that we've spent so much time trying to put together and to make strong. And then lastly, this motion also tells my opponent when I'm going to move. All three of those things are bad, not good, so don't do them. So what he's going to do is he's going to breathe from down here, and he's going to drop his shoulders, like he's got a heavy backpack on. And what that's going to do is that's going to start to pinch down his armpits. Ultimately, the goal of this, we talked about the body being one piece of wood. Ultimately, what we're trying to do is we're trying to create that one piece of wood all the way out to this hand, whether it be the knuckle or the fingertip, so that whatever strike comes from him, whether it's a palm strike, finger, or full fist, he's going to be able to generate power all the way back from here because his body structure is going to allow that transference of power. Thank you. All right, so what we've done now is we worked our way up all through the body, and we were talking about the shoulders being down, being able to breathe from the belly. But here's one of the tips that you could use to start to unify the arms with the body. And it's very simply this. I'm going to put this stick underneath Ken's shoulder, and what he's going to do is he's going to try to pinch it and break it. There you go. Now you see how that's starting to move is that he's trying to pinch that and break it. You can use pencils if you want, but this stick is a little easier for us to see here. And let me do the other side if you would, please. So from this side, what we're going to do is we're going to show you how the punch works. If he throws a punch where he flays his elbow out, this will fall down. So I'll just hold on to that, and when you punch, it falls this way. So what he wants to do is he wants to keep this pinched the entire time that he strikes. So when he punches, you see it's still in here. This allows for the arm to remain associated with the rest of the body and the rest of the body to be associated with the ground. Thanks. Now we touched on it just a moment ago, and what we're going to talk about more is more about the belly breathing. And you can talk about hara, dantian, you can talk about it any way you want, but it's all fundamentally the same thing. Instead of trying to rock the six-pack like he's going to go hang out at the beach, really what we're doing is we're distending the belly a little bit, but we're not just pooching it out. You see what I did is I kinked my back when I did this, and that's not what we're doing. We're keeping the back straight, and then we're going to distend the belly. But what we're going to do is we're going to push from down here. What we're going to do now is we're going to demonstrate how this belly works in the belly breathing. And so when he pushes on my belly here, and he pushes in, what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to breathe in this way. And now I hold it, and you can see that I'm still talking, and I'm still breathing, having a fine time, but when he pushes on me, it doesn't go anywhere. I'm still able to talk, I'm still able to communicate, but it's not just a distension, but it has to do with the spine and all of the other parts of the body we've talked about. Just breathing from the belly without these other parts of the body being unified doesn't give you what you need to actually execute true and good martial arts technique. So once again, let's take a look at what that looks like. When he pushes in, here I am, I'm on my abdomen, way in deep. And then I'm going to just simply breathe from my belly. And I'm here. And I can hold this position. And it even works down lower. If he pushes in here, at the top, right about where the bladder is, he pushes in, then I go here, this way. So all of this works from the very point of origin all the way to the point of insertion of these muscles. Earlier we talked about pinching the armpit down with a stick or a pencil or something in here, and the correct punch, which Ken will demonstrate again by keeping his elbow in close. So he punches. Excellent. Do that one more time. So there he is, and he's got this punch in place, and he's pinching down on the stick. But here's the thing. He also needs to keep this deltoid muscle soft like a piece of fruit. When he's prepared to throw his traditional karate punch, if he throws his elbow out, this becomes tight. Looking at it from this side, when he throws his traditional karate punch, if he lifts his elbow out, this deltoid muscle becomes tight. This, again, disassociates the arm from the body in the same way that we talked about how the body can be separated from the legs by being too tight. So we don't want to use the deltoid muscle, and at least if we do in a very minimum amount of way. And what I like to say is that this should feel like a piece of ripe fruit, the kind that I wouldn't buy. All right? So when he punches now, this should stay nice and soft, and the way that that stays that way is that his elbow stays close to his body. So what we're going to do now is we're going to demonstrate another way to test keeping the arm unified with the body. Let's go ahead and put this in your armpit. This is just a part of a manila folder. And when he throws his punch incorrectly, he'll lift his elbow and it falls away. If we replace it and he does his punch correctly, what will happen is it will fall forward. Because what he did is he kept his elbow tight to his body as he came forward, and it doesn't release until it comes into here. This is just a simple test you can do on your own, but it's a great way to test it. If, again, he lifts his elbow, activating the deltoid, this will fall out to the side instead of forward. It's a very simple test, and it's a great way to make sure that your arms are staying unified with your body. Let's talk about the arm. When we're looking at the arm in Sanchin Kata, you'll see that the elbow is in, fist, and as we look straight down, we'll see that the fist is outside of the elbow. Again, this is the same principle that we just talked about in respect to the punch. All he need do is turn his fist over, keeping his elbow basically in the same position, and he's got himself a really nice punch. Brings this back, again, you'll see that it's shoulder, elbow, but the fist is outside of the elbow. When it's on the inside or vertical, it's not strong. Here's an example of this. Let's turn right here, 45 degrees, and go this way. And I'm going to do this from the back. Normally this would be done from the front, but we need to be able to see what we're doing. If he is in this position and I start to push these together, it becomes very easy for me to do. Look, I'm using my fingertips from all the way out here. But when he anchors his elbows in and he comes into here, I can't get these things to move. It's about structure. It's not about muscle. It's about structure. And that's what we've been saying the entire time, is it is about aligning the bones and allowing the muscles to do the work that that lines would do on a mast of a tall ship. They're slack on one side, they're taut on the other, depending on whether you're tacking or not. And so as we look at this technique now, what we do is we say, great, good, this is making a nice triangle, we're flat across the top, the elbow's in, the fist is out. We all know this. However, the habit is to come here, especially if you've got large muscle mass in the lats or in the pecs, because it becomes uncomfortable. But you need to be able to come through that uncomfortableness and to get this technique. So now he closes down, he straightens out his back, tilts his pelvis, he's going to come forward just a little bit this way, and now when I push, he starts to feel the structure in his body and not just the muscle. Let me ask you this, Ken. Feel this one, and now feel this one. Yeah, which one are you fighting on? You're not fighting on this one very, very hard, but if he gets over here, for him to resist and keep that, it's very difficult for him to do it. So now what we've done is we've built ourselves, let's go ahead and face straight ahead right here, and we've got our foot turned in. We're going to go through now a full audit of all of the things we need to do just to get to the shoulder. The foot, the front foot is turned in, the knee slightly forward and then bent out. As you recall, the bamboo stick moved out as he did that, creating a shearing factor on the foot. This foot, we're going down that center line, not off the big toe. The heel's in the ground, the leg bones are stacked. The hip is not turned backward, but turned slightly forward. He drops his sacrum this way. He lifts the belt just a little bit. When he straightens the belt, he finds out that he's in this position. Now he closes down the solar plexus. Now he brings the elbows in, keeping, oh, that's nice, keeping the deltoids nice and loose. So now, when I start tapping his body, you see, we start hearing some good thuds. Now distend that just a little bit. There you go. Yeah. And you see, now we're starting to work a good stance and a good Sanchin dachi. And this is what makes it strong. Oftentimes you'll see during the shime or the testing, you'll see a lot of like this kind of thing, just really coming down hard. Not needed. Not needed. All I'm looking for is his resiliency here. This tells me everything I need to know. If his legs are bent too much, he's going to bounce. And I don't want bounce, I want this. So if I turn him around backward, again what you'll see is oftentimes testing, people will come up and they'll go, what are you looking for? What they're looking for is they're looking to see that spine is not straight, but he's pushed out from the lumbar, that he's taken the curve out of his upper back, and he's pulled his head back. We haven't gotten into that yet, but we will in a moment. So then when you see things like standing on the back of the leg, well, what am I trying to find out there? What I'm trying to find out there is I'm trying to see if, in fact, he has the rigidity, but yet flexibility that's needed for motion, but also for the generation of power. When you see people moving here, this is what they're doing. They're checking to see. So when you test somebody, let's move this way, with their Sanchin, it's not necessary to really, really hit them hard and bang on them. I don't have to go, pow, and hit this guy. I just need to see, there we go. I just need to see that he's in place. I just need to see that he's resilient this way. I just need to see that his spine is in place. If I come around to this front side and I start pulling it, that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking that his structure is allowing me to do this. Because honestly, if I stood here all day, I am going to win this, but that's not the way that karate is performed. Karate is performed percussively, instantly, and powerfully. So then I check here, I check here, I check his hips. These are the things that I want to check. Now we're going to go to the head. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have him actually push his head forward like this, and when he does this, I'm going to be able to just simply take these hands and don't let me move them. I can start moving him this way. But classically, we're taught that what we have to do is pull the chin back, make this grimace here. So go ahead and mimic me. Go, like that. Yeah, like this. And what we're saying here is that we're going to make it stronger by straightening the spine. Now let's turn sideways. And go back to the Morote Kamae, please. Okay. Here's what happens. When I tell him to move his head back and I touch him here, what he'll do is he'll tip his head back. Most people that are unskilled or don't know what we're talking about will say move your head back from C1, and they'll tilt their head. So to get over that, what happened was they said, no, move your chin back. So people, they moved their chin, they didn't move their head. So this is actually just a backward way of getting to the fact that I want this straight here. So now when he's straight here, and he's got all of this in place, and I start to pull, he's much, much stronger. Jet your chin forward for me. See, it's very easy. And it's a very odd thing, but it all happens up here in C1. That's about the placement of the head. The grimacing in the face is not really needed. What that is that's an affectation. And I've also been told that what I'm doing is I'm protecting the throat from a strike. I don't think so. I'm thinking that I can pretty much get it in there. Go ahead and pull your chin back and grimace for me. Really strong and powerful. I think I still get in there. I think I still win. Okay? So you're not protecting the throat. That's not a reasonable explanation of what's happening there. The applications of a kata are, of course, its very core. And as you learn various kata, in my system, of course, there's 12 kata, core kata, and sometimes there's more kata attached to those. Some systems go up to 27, even more. Others around 9, at least in the karate world. The question is always, what about the bunkai oyo? What about the application, the self-defense applications? And so when it comes to the self-defense applications of Sanchin, they seem to be very barren, very narrow, very uncreative. But that's not true. You shouldn't think of Sanchin kata in the way that you think of other kata. This is the rain that waters the trees. This is the kata that's above all others. The other kata are the trees. This is what nourishes those kata, gives them power and strength so that you can use them in a situation should you be called upon. But it also allows you to integrate the training, as we discussed earlier, into your body and into your mind. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to demonstrate a little bit about how one might apply this, and then I'm going to take you through how you can see the real application of Sanchin through the picture of another kata. So let's begin with that. So classically, people would say, oh, an example of an application from Sanchin kata would be if Ken were to punch with this hand, I would block here and I would strike here. Perfectly good, perfectly valid, and very simple and nice, clean. But I might also shift this way. So if we moved over this way and he punched at me, I might shift here, and my hand is already here because I learned this from the beginning of the form. This way. But again, the question becomes, how does this apply to other forms? It applies this way. If Ken were to punch and I move this way, now I'm in my neko asidachi, I'm in my cat stance. But you know what? My body is still in Sanchin. Here's an example of what I want to show you, is that if I just reach out here and I hit Ken smartly, not real hard, but I hit him smartly here, this way, that's nice. But if I get into cat stance and I try to hit him from here and my body isn't correct, I don't get anything. But once I drop into my Sanchin, I get what I want, even though I'm coming from a back bent foot. So what you want to do is you don't want to get caught up in the content of what Sanchin is trying to do, the mechanics, and say, oh, well, here's the secret technique and this is the secret technique. It's not like that. The secret is in the structure. It is in the overarching concept of the form. Then you can take it to the other forms and you can apply them, and you can be stronger and move with more power, strength, and authority. So that's how the applications of Sanchin are really made. Go take a kata, find the applications in that, apply the principles of Sanchin to it, and find yourself being much, much stronger than you were before you began.